Hello. See if anybody actually joins. I don't know how many people are going to be here because we kind of put this up a little late and we didn't send out a newsletter about it. So, unless you're active in the Facebook group, you likely didn't necessarily see the announcement for this. So, I might just be talking to myself for the next 45 minutes, which is entirely fine. You guys can come in later. I'm going to try and turn my camera, my laptop around. I personally am having a bit of technical difficulties because I don't have you're like, where's my mic? Like, look at it. Uh, where are the things I use to like? Oh, here it goes. Okay, let me put my mic on real quick, and then we'll just get started. So I posted the chapters that we will be reading. Of course, it's all tangled. I posted the chapters that we'll be discussing for this one. So what we're gonna do is throughout the week, we're gonna wrap up Hood Feminism, at least the discussion portion of it. Um, Both before and after we have the author chat with Mickey Kindle, just to give everyone a chance to kind of come and discuss it. And then, we post all these discussions. They all stay up in the Facebook group, and then they do get posted to our YouTube channel. So this way, if you want to come back and participate in the discussion and comment later on, you're more than welcome to. We will always hear for you. And it doesn't mean that you have to hurry up and finish reading the Oh, hello, Alana. It's always great to see you. Aha. Okay. The mic. And so it's oh, let me just clip this first so you don't get a bunch of feedback. All right. I hope you can still hear me. Almost now it's super loud. Yeah, so um you can always come back and discuss it later on, but we wanted to give everyone the opportunity to discuss specific chapters and kind of walk through the book because there's so much content in this book. She discusses so many points that we've done 2 live discussions before this and we're still not halfway through the book. So we're trying to get in what we can get in. And you still have time to add your questions for another 24 hours because I'll be doing that tomorrow. All right. So we are discussing How to Write About a Black Woman, Pretty 4A, Black Girls Don't Have Eating Disorders, The Fetishization of Fears, and The Hood Doesn't Hate Smart People. I wish she would have numbered these chapters. It would be easier to just say chapter this, and this. But we don't really have numbers here. It's been a slow grind through these chapters. So we're going to try and get through this discussion. Please comment along. Please engage. Please go purchase your syllabus, singular, not plural, for this. It's packed. That's what we're going to be using to curate this discussion, to walk us through it. And it was very, very well done. Also, I still have bookmarks available, even though the originals are pretty much almost sold out. All right. So, How to Write a Black Woman, which starts on page 85 of this edition of the book. I know my bookmark is pretty far in the front of this. I've been listening to the audio version of this. I kind of go back and forth between the audio and reading it. Sometimes listening to her voice for extended periods of time, I'm like, okay, let me just go ahead and read it. But I actually like the tonation and speed at which she reads. It's easy to follow along and ingest. And I found that like all audiobooks aren't created equal. Some audiobooks, the author is too monotone or they talk too slow. And I don't think that's particularly an issue with Mickey Kendall. All right, so she starts the chapter for How to Write About a Black Woman with the satirical instructions on how to write about Black women. And I'm going to actually just go ahead and read the beginning of this passage because it is tongue-in-cheek. It's obviously, as the syllabus says, it's satirical, right? So first, state your credentials. It's okay to be a woman, but not a Black woman. Their lived experiences are immaterial and can be dismissed as merely anecdotal. Make it clear that you are not racist or sexist. You are merely concerned about their plight. What plight? Well, pick one. Or several. Marriage, children, lack of either, too much education, not enough education, welfare, whatever you think will sell. It only matters that you highlight their troublesome natures. Whatever it is, you must be sure to make it clear that they aren't like the other women. They are failing to perform in some way that affects the whole of society, even if you can't explain how or why their personal lives are public property. Further, rely heavily on the idea of research that shows the problem is a problem. Never mention exactly when the research was done or who were the subjects of it. Too much context may unnecessarily complicate the conversation, and those pesky facts might get in the way of your ultimate goal. So, have you ever, and if you have, how often have you encountered articles or literature that wasn't satire, that was written in earnest, with similar to what Kendall describes? Man, so many articles. Like, and I think sometimes the articles tip over into like the black community wanting to share them of proof of how like single black women are the downfall of the black community, or like information about how likely we are to not be married, or how we are educated and single even though we have all these degrees, or any article that references the Moynihan report and like so many ways in which this has really been a thing. How is the burden of uplifting the race placed on black women especially? And how does the pressure to be respectable impact your day to day? So Kendall, in this chapter, she notes that when it comes to the harm inflicted on the LGBTQIA communities, the hood gets indicated as the primary source of danger. And the author describes several more other respectable settings like the church and schools, which, to quote, is on page 95. In the way that the hood is a reflection of the wider world, we don't have bigotry by accident. It's built and sustained by the same cultural institutions we're taught to revere. We cannot keep sustaining a system of gatekeeping that privileges a very few at the expense of the majority. And I feel like she also references this, and I want to say in like this, the similar themes to How to Write a Black Woman are also discussed in The Hood Doesn't Hate Smart People, which I feel like is a very similar theme that we got in, again, Eloquent Rage, right? Where we acknowledge this idea of how we as black folks might other ourselves to feed into respectability politics, to say that like we got all this education and we did all this and why can't other folks do this, and not actually look at the systems or structures. And in particular, because I'm skipping way ahead here, you know, I'm skipping way, way ahead here on the chapter, but this is a chapter we're going to close out on. The hood doesn't hate smart people. The overarching point is like this whole narrative that you constantly see when they profile black people of success who are like, I got teased. And I talk like a white person and I read books and I focused on my schoolwork. So I was teased and I wasn't really accepted by the black community. That's why I have a white wife. And it's like, are you acknowledging the ways in which these same institutions may have praised you or uplifted you at the detriment of your peers? And like kids tease and get teased, right? So like you being teased by children, it's like low bearing fruit, right? We all got teased. It really isn't that spectacular of a narrative unless the teasing became harmful, right? Not privileged teasing. There's actually a term for it. I need to, like, how would you encapsulate like somebody teasing you because you're pretty, somebody teasing you because you have a nice hair texture, somebody teasing you because you have light colored eyes, teasing you because you're smart? It's not the same way as somebody telling you ugly because you dark skin. You know what I mean? Like, we're not demoting the idea that teasing can be very harmful, that the ways in which we feed into white supremacist rhetoric is very harmful to black folks. But, everybody gets teased essentially. And yeah, that's what I feel like is a very similar point, that How to Write About Black Women and how we need to walk away from respectability politics, walk away from othering black women for their success when there are all these structures and societal pieces that make sure that the community of black women don't largely have access to these same successes that individual black women might have access to. And again, she discusses this in the chapter we'll close out with in this discussion. So how may we broaden the conversation of LGBTQIA harm that we discuss so that we discuss structural and state violence and also hold accountable bigotry within all of our communities, respectable and otherwise? Oh yeah, I mean, that's definitely the guy who was on. He had an Instagram post that went viral on Twitter, saying that he's surprised because he finally graduated from law school. And I mean, that's a like extreme extrapolation of it, right? But we just see it in articles, right? Like I was reading about like a black violinist, and he had this whole thing about being teased, and he came from the hood, and black kids didn't really like him because he wasn't like them, and now he plays for the Boston Symphony or Boston Orchestra or whatever you call it. And we absorb this sort of we weaponize, what's the right terminology for this, right? Like we take the trauma that we've experienced as children, we're not really interrogating that trauma, and instead we're just using it to seek acceptance from the white folk. No bueno. No bueno. But when it comes to broadening the conversation, I think we have to remember, right, that we're not just fighting for the liberation of black binary black women, right? But also that, and I really appreciate that Mickey consciously stresses like femme presenting, non-binary, trans, differently abled, right? That there is no liberation without the liberation of the entire community, and that we cannot other people because we don't necessarily understand their lifestyles or the way that they live. I think this chapter was like pretty easy to read. There wasn't really anything like some of the other chapters that might have made me pause and think. Not to say that like the entire book makes me think, but like the gun violence chapter really made me like stop and be like, hold on, now I'm going to get my gun license, so that might have changed me a whole lot. But you really have to think about where your politics land versus what she's suggesting in the chapter. And I felt how to write about black women. It was like, yeah, girl. Because she's largely talking about, the white folk over there. And so it's really easy to be like, yeah, them over there, they need to change the way they're going about it. They need to change what they're doing. But I just consistently, it's like what I've already addressed in this book, the appreciation for the acknowledgement of low income or what we could term as poor black women or hood black women, right? And the ways in which we might write about them, but we're really not inclusive of them. And I do think that is something that we can reflect of in the black community, because I do think the black empowerment circle is very much so hinged on visible wealth. And a lot of the ways that these empowerment events come about are about curating an audience of black women who look wealthy, and this idea that like this is the wealth that you want to attain, and it's not really inclusive of women from different socioeconomic backgrounds. Which is why like I really appreciate someone like a Super Sen. Even though, I might have some questions sometimes about her, but I appreciate this sort of speaking to an audience that often gets overlooked, and not clowning them for their lack of access. Like even the ways in which we talk about how we have to present now, right? Like I always make a joke about like, my lace on my wig being in certain tax brackets. Right? Because when it's visible, I know people are gonna have like, ooh, your lace is not laid. And it's like, yo, as a person who actually has the privilege and access to the lace that melts, that shit is expensive. It is not cheap to maintain. It tears, it wears easily. And so, this idea that someone might have a Milky Way weave, like if that's what's accessible to them and they're taking time and taking care of themselves and a lot of the ways which we present are expressions of ourselves, why would we shame someone? Because then, all it takes is for someone with baby hair and light green eyes to come and put that 10-piece Milky Way sewing, gluing, quick weave, whatever on their head, and suddenly it's like, oh, it's real cute. But when bitches in the hood is doing it, it's oh, this is how we clown them because they don't have, 30 inches of Chinese hair. Come on, y'all. We can all do better here. That's what I'm saying. We can all do better. Yeah, this is what I'm saying. I really appreciate, because she doesn't, it's not, this conversation with Mickey Kendall isn't just surface. She's not just saying things. She's also hitting the nail on the head with the fact that, like, there's long been, and this is also what comes up in our complex theory read. I need to finish that syllabus for chapter 1 and 2. Gotta get to it this week. Uh, but in chapter 11, a Black feminist thought, right? This lived experience of the same people that we are claiming to, have all this historical fact on, right? Are we really, and when I talk about dialogical education within the book club, it's this idea that you see everyone as having intelligence within them. And are you actually, and it's not that you're going to say, okay, that's the actual intelligence, I'm going to tell you what specifically it is, but you understand that everyone has a right to be able to address what their needs are and what's particular to their livelihood, and not for us to come in and replicate these same systems of, respectability politics comes from, white Protestants coming down to the southern United States because they wanted to keep Black folks out of the North, and helping to launch some of the first HBCUs and saying, if we can get Black women to become teachers, then they'll be better at raising respectable children. And we'll get a small class of Black folks to shun the way poor Black people live, which is where you get terms like grease monkey and niggas on a porch. And it aligns with this whole history of, like, in the Jim Crow modernity of creating a penal code. And folks getting arrested for vagrancy. And, this Black code that really found ways to reinvest in Black folks as labor, as free or close to cheap labor. Close to free or cheap labor is what I meant to say, right? So all these things kind of, these webs can get much deeper than even just what Kendall is referencing in How to Write About Black Women and the respectability politics, and how truly harmful they can be if we keep replicating them in our discussions of any member of the Black community. So, Pretty 4A, ... ellipse, starts on page 99, and she talks about the politics of desirability, which is something that I've been thinking a lot of, right? Because I'm a little ahead of y'all. I've been reading the complex theory book. The syllabus for that is also already done. We are on a roll of being prepared in this book club, but I have been reading All About Love by Bell Hooks and really thinking through, what are my desires for intimate partnerships? And if I realize that I have never been loved by a man, but I have been desired, how much have I fed into the politics of desirability? And where do I place this understanding of the way I've been desired in my life? And have I fed into that, right? That whole desire trap, right? Because I was talking to my therapist the other week about the fact that I have consciously, for the most part, divested from desirability. That I don't feed too much into this idea that positioning myself so that I'm desired, not even simply by men because I'm heterosexual, not even simply desired by men, but that I play into this, like, as an influencer, the idea that I have to be, that probably has taken so there's still some work to be done in that area, that I have to present a certain way because if people see me as visually desirable, they'll listen to what I have to say. Which is kind of the trap of YouTube. It is true, if you present a certain way, people will be more likely to click on what you're doing. But I think it's also, other influencers have shown that if you have a commitment to the integrity of what you're saying, you can curate an audience without fitting into the desirability element. Okay, I'm trying to get my, where did my mouse go? I can't, like, click on the comments anymore. All right, we're just gonna keep moving along here. So, how or why might beauty aesthetics play such a significant role in respectability politics, desire, and violence? And that's a very good question that, for me, that hits on all the historical notes of respectability politics and desirability. So it serves no one to feign ignorance of what it means to capitalize on fetishization and exoticism without doing anything to combat the problems most likely to be faced by those who are disadvantaged by these standards. How have we seen these examples of this within public discourse and social media activism? Ugh. Oh, I definitely have thoughts. I just wish my mouse could work so I could scroll up and pull up the comments. You know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna do this. Unplug this. Lost a little light, but I got my mouse back. All right, now I'm gonna plug it back in. Get that light back on. Oop, I'm freezing every time I do that. Okay. I had to get my mouse back. It was bothering me. And I think about this, about how often when you go on social media and whatever, especially in like the activist space, how often it's still like light-skinned women. Why is it always barely melanated, and myself included? Why are we always the most prominent people visible in this space? I'm always amused at how often it's members of the baby hair squad, no matter what faction of the Black community Black influencer space we are talking about. There is always a prevalence of, curly haired, silky textured, light-eyed, light-skinned, skews towards the European spectrum of beauty standard, Black women who are prominent in these spaces. Or even if we get, I always say that for me, across even past race, right, that social media at large has broken down this barrier, right, where everyone had to like have like the blue eyes, blonde hair, stick figure aesthetic, right? But I don't feel like we've moved the needle forward, but we're like in District 1, right? We haven't liberated. We're still very much so capitalistic in our interest, and we replicate again these ideas of beauty standards that are very much built on the image of wealth. So it's, I can be queer or I can be non-binary, but I still need to look like, straight white teeth, clear eyes, right? Clear bright eyes before you even get to the coloration, right? Like, do you think about how in the other chapters that Kendall has addressed around housing and around food sources, that Black folks, well, not even just Black people, but poor people, if you're not, your eye, girl, I don't be doing science. The white of your eyes, it can change colors based off of your diet. And so this idea of like clear, bright eyes, or to be able to see the reflection in your eye color and the way people face tune themselves, because it all feeds into like this image of things that show a status of wealth and being able to like eat a certain way, like the minutia of how like sticky these things get. Yeah, I love Stacey Abrams as well, and because not only is it like, she pushes back against a lot of the harmful standards of desirability that are prominent across the political playing field, across just any visible playing field, but also that she doesn't wear it as like her badge, right? She doesn't walk in the room and saying, this is what defines me, because like it's still her work that's important. I think somebody that you could say Lizzo might wears it more of a badge, but I just like that, like nobody's inhabited the space that Lizzo has inhabited before. And the fact that she is making us all confronted, I also greatly enjoy. How are beauty aesthetics and pretty politics contingent on more, and this is what I'm talking about, more than just colorism, body size, gender, class? How are these things inextricably, you know what I'm trying to say, linked? It's in the syllabus too. You could go read it. I got my rubber bands in. I should probably pop them out before I started this. If anyone else has additional thoughts. I hate to admit this, but I did find myself waiting until the end of the school year to cut my hair just because there would be fewer eyes on me at work in the summer. I'm like, damn, I'm caught up. And, this is something, like, I live a very visible, I don't live a super visible life, but I'm visible. Like, my work is visible, right? And so even the idea that I had a gap, or I didn't like my jawline, and now I'm 35 with braces, um, having to talk to myself about being comfortable truly in my skin is real. Like, I have plenty of moments where I have to say, what is this rooted in, right? This idea that I don't want to get on camera because I don't have a wig on. This idea that I have to have makeup on. And is it really justified that, like, am I really, because, in my mind, sometimes the way I aesthetically present is that I wanted to counter this image of who gets to say they're educated, who gets to say they're well-read, right? Because we often say, well, women who wear like those thick lashes, and I love a hood, what I determine as a hood aesthetic, a lay wig and some thick lashes. And it's the idea that that person can't be intellectual. That part of me is like, okay, but am I also attached to this idea that I can't present in my natural state of being because people won't want to hear what I have to say? Like, it can go both ways for me. And so I have to be conscious of where I'm really landing with that. Embracing as beautiful a body that isn't adjacent to whiteness is an act of resistance, a way to keep alive the culture and community that colonialism and imperialism were attempting to crush. That is such a great quote. Oh man, do you believe beauty to be political? And if so, how does the political charge get enacted on a daily basis? I mean, I think just as being Black women and defining our beauty for ourselves, I think even the idea that like so much of our body has been commodified, this idea of you having to have a certain lower half size, your hip to buttocks ratio, the way your waistline has to exist, just loving yourself as is an act of radical resistance. And I think it's very political to, as a Black woman, to truly love your body, because we're constantly being informed that something about us isn't correct. Something about us is wrong, right? I have a short torso, and I can say I think I'm funny shaped, right? But I don't say that as a reason for people to be allowed to treat me different, because I still love, like, when I walk out the door, it's like I might be funny shaped when I look at myself, but you better see me as fine as fuck. I don't know what is wrong with you. But it's to learn to love myself is political, because I'm being informed that you have to have a very small, slim waistline. You can't have a gut that hangs. If you have a gut at all, it needs to bulb up like all pretty and proper. And why is it defined as pretty? I do happen to have a wide lower half, and it's really been interesting the way people respond to me when they see me in person. Cause I'm like, okay, yeah. I mean, but that's not what happens when women don't have that. And why do they need to feel bad about it? Why do they need to feel that they need to invest in getting, the risk of getting a medical procedure to change that, to fit into this very like ant-shaped figure that Black women are supposed to have? Oh man, I don't see it keeps going back up. You get a pretty gut through liposuction. That is what's happening. Girls will tell you they drink water and wear waist trainers thinking that shit sucked out and the skin tucked and stretched up. Okay. Moving right along, if anyone else has things to say about this chapter, Pretty 4A, because I think, she covered it all. She came at the throat and said, look, we got to learn to love ourselves. We have to learn to embrace ourselves. Even the hair, she goes to this messaging about, being natural, right? And again, right? Like I've talked about this, from the texture discrimination to the ways in which we constantly define shiny, curly, like the baby hair brigade, as the golden standard of natural hair, and how these images are constantly replicated. We go from relaxer to natural hair, and then baby hair has become popular, and now you got girls relaxing their edges because they're trying to fit into a very specific beauty standard that's largely out of the reach of a lot of us, like just plain flat out got nappy hair. Look, I'm baby hair brigade, but this on my wig. I'm just waiting for my hair to get a little bit longer, and then we out here. But again, I myself, we feed into these politics of how we define our own beauty standards. It's largely shaped by socio political standards of society. All right. Pretty girls don't have eating disorders. Whew. Again, being in the influencer space, the body dysmorphia that is rampant. Oh man, we didn't even touch on Snapchat filters because somebody need to go help Beyonce. Between her and Jessie Wu, I don't know who's the worst offender of like filters that slenderize their features. And I'm like, girl, y'all are gorgeous women. I don't know why and on top of like Snapchat filters like lower the quality of the video. So it's always weird to see women who I see as extremely beautiful rely on the prevalence of filters to Europeanize their facial features. And I think it was great that she goes from pretty 4A right into black girls don't have eating disorders, because body dysmorphia is directly attached to the idea of body dysmorphia. Did I just repeat myself? Desirability politics is directly attached to body dysmorphia is what I was trying to say. I hope that's what I said. Okay. What was your relationship to food growing up? What are some of the ways disordered eating gets unwittingly or intentionally celebrated within our homes and families? How does Kendall relate Black people struggling with eating disorders into structural racism and prejudice? And, I really, again, I really am enjoying every bit of this book. It's just so real to like our at least my lived experience, like this idea. And I hadn't really thought much about it, like the ways in which we celebrate eating disorders because we don't believe that Black girls can have eating disorders. So this idea, oh girl, you got so much discipline when you see someone picking at their food and not eating a whole lot, because typically, for like my family, eating is a mode of celebration. I see food like I'm Jill Scott. Food is love. You ever listen to a Jill Scott album? Every song got something to do with food. Grits. You know what I mean? Like, that's how I see food. I love food because I grew up in a household where we ate dinner as a family every night. And that's where we had all our discussion and all our talking. And so I didn't necessarily grow up with an issue around food security, because also we were working class folk. But we grew our own food. So my dad knows how to farm. And so a lot of the food I grew up eating was food that either, well, vegetable wise, even protein wise, we ate cow tongue growing up, which I hate. It wasn't tripe, baby. It was the cow tongue with the taste buds still on it, served with a side of mustard. Because my dad would go get like a whole cow and be like, we got to eat the whole thing. Chitlins, we were never made to eat chitlins, but they definitely got served. Pig feet, I'm probably the only person in my family that don't eat pig feet. You eat everything but the oink. So I grew up in a family on my dad's side of the family. They're all agricultural folks, farmers, or they have, I don't know what you call somebody who raises cows and chickens and stuff. That's my daddy's side of the family. So I didn't necessarily grow up with food security issues or food scarcity. But when I moved to New York, and you have this much more slender and skinny, like the model-esque status for the way folks are supposed to be shaped, and people are flat out just not eating to attain these body shapes. And in the early 2000s, this image became very popular, right? And it's the same thing that leads to like Little Kim doing what she did to her face. The ways in which we really degraded the Black woman body. And it's seen in the Black community on some level, and maybe this has changed, maybe this is different for different folks, but like to be able to go, it's seen as discipline to not eat a lot. Or if you get a plate full of like vegetables and that's all you eat, you're not eating no carbs, you're not eating any complex carbs, you're not eating any protein, you get a plate full of like vegetables and that's all you eat. And even the ways we celebrate people that do these diets, whether it's various forms of keto or going vegan or vegetarian, and we don't really talk about, are you getting all the nutrients you need? We just, oh girl, That's so good of you that you can sit and like have so much discipline. We celebrate losing weight. Again, to go back to Super. Super had a whole, like, she was having seizures. And folks are out here talking about how skinny she is. Girl is in the hospital, can't remember what happened to her a week ago. She ain't got no memory. And people are out here celebrating the fact that she got real skinny. Like, ooh, I wish I could be like that. That's not something you celebrate. But in the Black community, we do have this like subconscious, it's an unintentional way of celebrating what really is, yes, it's an eating disorder, or is sickness, or is not, it's not healthy. At the end, the very minimum of it, it's not healthy. And celebrating this as a a positive because a person has attained a slimmer figure. So I really did. This was not something that I learned in the household. This was something that I experienced once I got to college and moved to New York. Was this idea that we should be sacrificing the way we eat to attain a certain figure, and it's ridiculous. Yeah, and this is similar for me, Danny. That we big folk over here too, and food was a celebration, and so I really consumed this sort of body dysmorphia train of thinking from getting out the house and then moving up to the north and then becoming an influencer, because it's bad. There's a ton of folks. I'm not gonna name no names, but there's someone who I get who her and I are in a very similar silo. We had lunch together once, and she nibbled her fried chicken sandwich. Like the whole sandwich was left on the plate at the end, and I eat. I'm like, baby, if we just got to be fat, we just got to be fat. Because the one thing is, I'm gonna be satisfied. Okay, I'm gonna be satisfied and full. If I paid my $10 for this sandwich, I'm finna eat this sandwich. She nibbled. I was like, ooh, that's real body dysmorphia. Like, if you're that worried about how your gut is gonna look in the outfit you wore today, one, why order the sandwich? Like, you didn't have to appease me. You could have just really got you a bowl of broccoli if that's what that was. But like, why deprive yourself? We too smart for this, but like, it's real. It's a real thing that like a lot of folks are dealing, and it's very covert the way we talk about our body image, right? Um, this is why I just don't post my full body on Instagram. I have like one picture on me in a bathing suit because of the way we prioritize certain assets on the body. And it's like, I just don't, I already have my own insecurity about the way I'm shaped, but I don't want that to turn into an unhealthy relationship with food. Like, if I know I got to work out, like, let that be the end of it. I don't want to start posting more, and then you get all sorts of commentary, and it's just not. Mm-mm. Why do you think the unhealthy coping mechanisms Kendall identifies remain what kind of invisibilized? Chloe, where did you get this word from? Despite their very common presence in Black youth communities. How do the mental health, emotional wellness, and food scripts intersect for Black women in regards to the body positivity movement? Yeah, I think even within you going to the doctor and the way I had a doctor, because I have a skin disease, tell me that I need to get a gap in between my thighs in order to clear up my hydradenitis. Like the ways, every way in which Black women interact with society, we're constantly being criticized for the way we're shaped. And then it gets these same sort of, Black girls start going, white girls start going to get the butt implants, and all of a sudden, it's now desirable to be shaped like a bug. And it's ridiculous and it's unhealthy. And I'm really worried that we're going to see a lot of shortened lifespans because we're feeding into very, very harmful and dangerous ideals of what a Black woman body should look like, or a Black femme presenting body should look like. And how does this wear on your mental health and emotional well being if the center of how you define yourself is based on feeding into a particular image that says we have slim waist, wide hips, big butts, ample breasts, bright eyes, white teeth? Like, done eyebrows, your nail, like all that stuff starts to stress you out and it becomes a very, very expensive upkeep. Very expensive, right? And if you don't have the means to that, like, why are we judging people for looking like they've lived? We need to be kinder, especially to people who we're not in helping to get greater access to the types of livelihood that would allow them to look physically what we define as better, right? I think a lot of the ways we define acceptable presentation, we're not even thinking about how much access a person needs to have to make that sort of presentation sustainable. Bruh, until I went to go, because it got really bad, I didn't realize that I went to a black dermatologist when I lived in New York up in Harlem. And that's when I finally, like, they just flat out told me I had to stop eating greasy food. That was kind of like the end all. Like, they were like, yeah, girl, you can eat fried food, but you can't do that shit every day. And they gave me a steroid and told me I had to stop wearing underwears with dyes in it. Like, there was a bunch of like small things I could do. But before that, I was basically told that I was obese. And that's why it was triggering my hydrogenitis. And I'm just like, come on, this is not true. And it was dismissive, and it was so crushing to hear that from a doctor. All right, let's move into the fetishization of fierce, and then we're gonna close out on one more chapter. It's strange because I think black girls and women are often cautioned if they are eating too much and if they are not eating enough. They are going to be skin and bones. My mom literally told me a man isn't going to have anything to hold on to if it's too right. And why is our desirability on, like, why is that attached to the ability to partner? Because you could be fine as fuck physically and still get cheated on. Let me tell you, an ability for a man to have the emotional wavelength to truly love you and honor that love has nothing to do with the way you physically present at all. So this standard that we set for women that says in order, to be partnered, you have to present a certain way, and predicating the way we look not the way we eat, not on our actual health and sustenance, but on our ability to be picked by a man. Like, come on. Okay, on page 127, the quote, let me pull it up. There seems to be a very thin line between fierce and toxic in feminist circles these days. I have been called both at various points, and honestly neither ever seemed to quite fit. But one of the things I have noticed about the term fierce is that it carries its own highly specialized baggage. What are some other terms often attributed to black women that similarly carry their own insidious baggage? Strong. The strong black woman trope. The way, all like with Tabitha Brown, the way people are mothering her, like turning her into like their own therapist. I mean, if that's the branding she wants to do, I'm really happy for her. So I'm not shading the way she's gone about her branding, but how quickly people have like thrown their emotional baggage at her. Like, ooh, she a human too. It's not her responsibility to always take care of you emotionally. You gotta do some work for yourself as well. Okay. Yes, this is a good one. Sassy. Strong black woman. Yes, all of those. On page 129, yet the demands that risk be taken by those without the insulation of racial privilege never abate. Instead, the narrative is one that lauds the courage of those who take the risk with very little discussion of the possible aftermath. Oh man, that is very true, right? the ways in which even like you take it out of the you take it to a much more personal level, work, right? Why how often have we as black women been in a position where everyone is uncomfortable because of something that's happening at work and they expect you to be the one to go say something about it? They expect you to be the one to approach the boss, right? They'll do all this complaining as a group, but then the boss come around, everybody get quiet and expect you to be the one to go and address an issue. And it's like, well, what insulation do I have? Like, I'm not a white woman. I can't go blow up the spot and be like, oh, I'm still gonna have a job after this. You know, like this is crazy. Now you know how I feel about this hypergamy movement. They make money on teaching black women how to present in order to catch a man who can pay for a lifestyle. I mean, I do think the hypergamy movement is harmful. I get the idea of black women wanting to discuss ways to present as more feminine, not feminism, but the ways in which you want to be more feminine, right? Like, I do believe there's power in femininity for both men and women, right? There's power in understanding that side of yourself. However, and I get the idea of talking about it in ways that are, because often femininity is presented as a European standard, as a fragile white woman thing, and wanting to talk about it in ways in which I, as a black woman, in particular to my body type, my hair type, the makeup that I have access to, the makeup options that I have access to, that I want to talk about the ways in which I can, be softer and more feminine, if that's what you desire. But this idea that we're still replicating these very Victorian standards of beauty that are largely out of the realm of access for black women, to say that that's what's going to ensure that you're going to end up and like, I mean, if it is that you would like your intimate partner to pay for everything and that's your standard, by all means, that's your standard. But is that really fulfilling for black women in their intimate partnerships if we are not discussing the emotional labor that goes into a partnership? And this is a conversation that actually needs to not be pointed at women on how to get men, but we need to be talking on men on how to get good women. Like, they need to be doing better. Men are doing badly. Anywho, let me not veer off too far here. What are the consequences of being fierce, of black women being fierce in our work? How does Kendall propose we resolve the harm induced and forgotten of black women being fierce warriors? And this comes at the end of the chapter. We expect marginalized voices to ring out no matter what obstacles they face, and then we penalize them for not saying the right thing in the right way. We assign a level of resilience that is unparalleled, and then once it is met, we assume that the person displaying it doesn't have feelings. Or more accurately, we decide that they don't need anyone to care about their feelings. In fact, mainstream feminism renders the feelings of white women as a primary concern, even in situations that are emphatically not about them. And word to Alana for talking about Denisha posted it though. Denisha posted the link to the African American women defending themselves, and Alana said that you can buy a reprint, and I went ahead and ordered mine yesterday, and it's shipped already. Gave my little New York Times my little $55 for a print, and it's going to come next week. So thank y'all for that. I was like, oh, I need something to decorate my bedroom. This is perfect. Yeah, how have y'all experienced this idea of being pushed because you're a black woman, as people claiming you're sassy or strong or fierce, and how has it actually been harmful when people put a bunch of responsibilities on you, emotional responsibilities on you, without actually thinking about the type of support that you need to do that work? Yeah, I did. It was only $55 to go get the print. And then they email you and say, is this the print you want? And my phone is in the other room. But like, I literally, I'll post the details, because it's on page 53 of the November 17th, 1991 New York Times under campus life section. And I put it in last night, and they got back to me this morning, like, is this the print you want? And it was exact. It was like, it's just the ad itself with the border around it. And so that's the print I got. So I'm very excited to receive it. 53, girl. I just said big 53. 53. I'll put all the details on the post that Danisha posted. I'll put all the details there because I was surprised it wasn't that expensive. If you get it in a frame, it's $135, but I figured I can just get my own frame for much cheaper. But I'm very excited. All right, but y'all answer the question. Has anybody felt harm from being seen as a strong black or fierce black woman? All right, and while we wait for those responses, we're going to move over to the last chapter we are discussing today. We are right on time. I get to go roast me some chicken and eat me some dinner now. The Hood Doesn't Hate Smart People, which is the chapter I discussed earlier, because I very much so felt like this connected to the chapter we started out with how to write about black women, because it's very much so induces the respectability politics. And I think in how to write about black women, she's referring to the white folks, right, who write about us. And in the Hood Doesn't Hate Smart People, she's referring to us as black people. At work, at least, I swear they think you can do everything on low pay. And when you say you can't and ask for help or more money, the reactions vary from, sure, what you do is easy, to, sure, for people that don't do anything all day. It's fresh. Girl. And we see this explosion now where everyone, like, I really love the fact that people are getting real bold. We're talking about the ways in which they've been sidelined at their job. And how, man, I got stories because my entire career on YouTube, people have been telling me that I am too aggressive, I'm too unruly, I don't do what brands say. And I'm like, well, if they're doing harmful things, why would I do what they're doing? And now all of a sudden we have this, come to Jesus moment in 2020, and folks are all, it's like, oh, I got tea on people. Let me share. And I have homegirls who, like, my homegirl is a bartender at a job right now. So similar to you with your coworkers and asking for more weekends off. Her and her other, because of the COVID-19 response, they didn't know if they were going to get paid or not, or if they were still going to be employed. And like, all the people were coming to her to complain, and she's Puerto Rican, and they were telling her to go talk to the general manager. And she's like, okay, well, I can't go if you're not going to back me up. Like, if one of us goes, all of us needs to go and express our concerns. You can't sit here and lament to me about how they treating you as a Mexican. And she's black Puerto Rican, but like, how you going to talk about you as a Mexican and you not checking them on what they did for Cinco de Mayo, but you all of a sudden want me to go speak up for you on whether or not we still employed? Like, are your vocal cords not working? I mean, I could talk it through with you. I can give you the language to go use, but by all means, you're going to need to talk about this shit yourself. All right, the last chapter, The Hood Doesn't Hate Smart People. Growing up, what was the treatment of smart black youth, particularly by other black people? And I love that this has been a reoccurring theme in everything we've read, from when the chicken head was cold. Oh, I just bit down and that hurt. That jaw really shifted. Yeah. When chicken heads come home to roost, and eloquent rage, and now Hood feminism around, checking this idea that we don't use our own privileges over other black folks, because being the smart black girl meant that you were treated very differently, especially if you were in a church. The way in which people respond to you versus other children could be harmful to those other kids. On page 144, there's a quote. There is an idea by white supremacy and fostered by anti-blackness, that Black Americans have no culture to own or defend, that anyone can move into our culture and communities, stand outside the context, and declare themselves a part of what was built through sacrifice and suffering. So the syllabus asks, how do you define Black culture? And this is what I was talking about earlier on, right? How many interviews of successful Black people where they talk about, oh, I was teased for acting like I'm white. I was othered because I didn't have the same interests as the Black kids in the hood. And I was into books and Shakespeare and Mozart. And people not understanding all the privileges. And oftentimes it's like an individual took an invested interest in you and gave you opportunities that largely your community did not have. Someone responded to you positively in a way that they largely do not respond to other Black children. So while, yes, it's true that you were teased, you also have to understand the system and the structure and the societal structure that you lived under that made that teasing a thing and also made it possible for you to get out while most of your community didn't. And I love how she acknowledges, like, the same kids that teased her as children, because that's what children do, also support her as an adult and repost her articles and praise the success. They've been very supportive of her coming from their community and becoming successful in her own right. Kendall discusses the common myth that writes that Black people from the hood disdain Black people who are smart and also in the hood. Why might this myth not appear in Black communities outside the hood or communities of upper and middle class folk? Well, because they have access. Ooh, what's the New Yorker prep for prep article? I think I know what you're talking about, but I'm not sure. What are some of the ways that we privilege Black people's intelligence when it is recognized by an accredited institution and not the intelligence of Black folk without formal education in our regular everyday? And this, again, goes back to chapter 11 of Black feminist thought and talking about acknowledging the validation of lived experiences of working class, low income Black women. What do we give up when Black people assimilate, and what do we potentially gain? I don't really think that there is any communal gain. I think there's individual gain from assimilation, but for me, assimilation always means making white people comfortable. And I think we're now at a zenith, right, where we have that 8 Can't Wait campaign that came out by Campaign Zero, which is the foundation that's run by DeRay, Sam, and Brittany Pacanetti. DeRay's been taking a lot of heat over this 8 Can't Wait, but that is absolutely, to me, was a vanity project that positioned them as being able to make white folks comfortable. Oh, yes, I have read this. You can't really click the link from here, but you can click it in the comment section. I have definitely read that article by Vincent Cunningham about, and it's also kind of like the work that Nicole Hannah-Jones, is that her name, has talked about with the ways in which, like, and even there's This American Life episode where they follow a kid who, like, this philanthropist has funded his education, but they're like, you can't just throw money at a situation, right? You could put a kid in a good school, but what he has an immigrant mother who doesn't speak English, and so he's not going to college because he wants to be able to work and stay home with his mom and take care of his mother. So you have to be able to create all these other structures. You have to fix all these other systems that are causing this deficit in the community, right? It's not just, oh, well, if you do good in school, that's their ticket out, because you still have family that might not be doing good. What if your parents have a medical emergency? What if someone dies suddenly? What if your siblings, familial connections are very important regardless of race. And this idea that you simply having access through you simply doing good in school is going to be able to uplift you out of all these other problems is just such an unfair, unfettered, unthoughtful thought process. But yeah, as I was saying, the 8 can't wait thing very much so felt like a project that made white people comfortable. That made the people that came up with that campaign look like they're the more reasonable black people in this whole conversation around defunding the police. They're the reasonable blacks. And, it's actually taking away from the people that are doing the work to really push for the defunding that absolutely needs to happen. Growing up as a smart girl always felt a little alienating because people in your family church do treat you differently, and a lot of the kids do too out of resentment. You just want to be like everyone else. However, I also saw the way I received more help to get places and attain things because people thought I had potential. I can't help but think that if people had taken a stronger interest in my peers, whose strengths may not have been academics or who couldn't thrive academically due to various factors, that they would have achieved so much, if not much more, than me. Absolutely agree. That is a word and a half. I'm getting real dark. Need to turn on the lamp, but it's about time to end this anyway. But yeah, to answer the last question, I absolutely think that with assimilation, black folks might gain as individuals, but they lose a lot culturally, and there's absolutely nothing that the black community gains, because it was something the black community gains, we've assimilated, again, respectability politics, the Black Baptist Church, HBCUs, how we went from typically poor black preachers that came in the community to college educated, lettered preachers that now lead the pulpits. We have plenty of black folks that have come through Ivy League institutions. And that does endear people to folks. Oh, you went to Yale, you went to Harvard. It does endear people to them. But that doesn't do anything for the community, right? Like, that doesn't change the position of the community. Yikes. I mean, yeah, I think a lot of white folks, like I said, Lovelace jumped on that 8 Can't Wait campaign quick because it made sense to them and it doesn't require them to do any work or to reimagine society. Because it's like, why do we have this attachment to prisons in the first place? Well, that's a whole nother conversation. I've been reading Are Prisons Obsolete today. I got to finish reading Feminism. I got to get these questions together for the live chat. I hope y'all have submitted y'all questions. Please do. I'll leave the form open for another day because I'm going to do the questions. Oh, no, I got to do them tonight. Actually, I'm going to close that form down tonight because I got to get other questions top of tomorrow morning. There's actually a really good NPR Police and Defunding. Oh, man, I just listened to it today. It's only like 9 minutes long. Police unions. It's on police unions. It's on Planet Money. Police unions and police violence. 13-minute listen. Planet Money. It's send it to all your white folks. Dag, I am so sorry. He really thought that campaign 8 Can't Wait, campaign 0 thing was fit to do something. It ain't. Abolish the police. Get all them hoes, pigs out of here. All right? Thank y'all for joining me. I think Morgan's coming in tomorrow night. She is, to do the next 5 chapters. Then we have Mickey Kindle coming in on Wednesday night. It's going to be great. So much work to get done with that. Thursday, we're doing Black Feminist Thought, chapter 12, wrapping that up. And then I'm going to drop the chapter 1 and 2 syllabus. And then we have the last conversation for Hood Feminism. So we can have like a post-author chat that Morgan's going to host on Friday. All right. The Jamie Oliver, yes, defunding the police. There's so much good information coming out and so much work by the abolitionists who have long been doing this work to acknowledge. Alana is dropping some links in the comment section from the New Yorker on How to Change America, the Prep for Prep by Vincent Cunningham. So yeah, plenty of things to read. There's so much good information coming out right now. We don't need to be distracted by the comforting of the projects that are out to comfort white folks. They're just distractions and taking up time and space. We don't need to worry about them. All right. I'm going to leave the sea of blackness that I currently exist in, and I'm going to holler at y'all later. Good night.